America. Kamala Harris has a choice. Will she make the same mistake Donald Trump did? That's tomorrow. Here's Chris.
All right, everybody. I'm Chris Cuomo. I appreciate your company here at NewsNation. So, I said Trump could win the election. And the left went off on me like they heard me shout Voldemort at Hogwarts. This is not superstition. You don't speak things into existence. This is about numbers, messaging, and money. Welcome to politics. But tonight I'm going to put it differently. And maybe each party can find some sukkar in it. And those of you smart enough to be independent will get some food for thought. 3 points. Point one, if you look at the state of play, better minds, including Professor Alan Lichtman of the 13 Keys, they'll tell you that this is the Democrats' election to lose. I see it as Trump's to lose. Now, polls basically say that currently, but forget about the polls. They're just snapshots of now, and they mean little until the fall. Trump has an organizational advantage. He has a devout base of close to 40% of the country who are either so tied to wanting to disrupt the system or so tied to him as their spirit animal that they have Brokeback Mountain level commitment to him. And that includes in party, which is totally capitulated to him. He needs to please no one with an R next to his name or her name but himself. And there's a risk in that I'll get to in a second. He also has momentum, including surviving an assassination attempt. And then there is the biggest reason this is Trump's race to lose. It all rests on him. He will determine whether he wins or loses. Now, I don't mean he's going to determine the outcome of the election by rigging it, no matter how much he may want that. But his performance takes us to point two. VP Kamala Harris has a very different hand. She's starting almost from scratch. The process of getting the nomination was a negative. Biden saddled her with a DEI scarlet letter by saying he was picking a black woman. The momentum she has is largely, I believe, relief from the ABT vote, anyone but Trump, and the media halo. The first is somewhat conditional. The second is absolutely conditional and only of the moment and will certainly fade by fall. And her picking of running mate may be her first taste of being torn down by the same outlets now building her up. Again, welcome to politics. But here's the bigger truth. Harris likely needs a movement to win. She's not enough. Maybe being a woman in her race, both of them, because biracial is a feature of humanity, not an unnatural oddity. Those all may play a role, a positive for some, but gender bias probably makes it more of a challenge. But she's also just not that dynamic a figure, not the leader of a specific wave of enthusiasm, at least not yet. Anti-Trump is not enough, but. You take the combination of the ABT vote and the fact that women are the first victims of having a right taken from them in America, and that the man who did it checks literally every box of what many, if not most, women do not want in their bosses, leaders, husbands, and sons. And Harris may be the beneficiary of women deciding to make their witness, especially for her as a woman. And maybe a ticket that makes double history. You may have a black female president at the top of the ticket and a Jewish VP. We'll know tomorrow. You could have a moment that sweeps up women and independents. Now, that is only if she takes point three to heart. Well, what's that? I don't know. I haven't written it yet. I'm kidding. Point three. What will decide what rules the day? My sense at this point. What the winner convinced people that they are not just against, but for. What the winner did to convince people, not just what they are against, but what they are for. That takes us to the unicorn in politics, policy. Everybody loves to say it's about policy, right? And then it's never about policy. Trump voters who want a modicum of respect say, look, I got to hold my nose and vote for Trump because of the policies. But this is where they're conning themselves, and Trump is currently beating himself. He doesn't argue policies. He just says that one line, my policies are better. He then follows that with the worst two things you can do in politics, maybe three. He offers empty promises of the best of everything with no policy plan for how. Or he just attacks Harris and Biden for having bad policies, but how he can make them better. Or he'll play the ugliest form of insult politics that he can in place of discussing policy. Each and all are unforced errors that are helping Harris more than anything else. Examples. The biracial lead balloon. So many righties have asked me, why is Trump saying that she can't be black and Indian? Because one of his only hard and fast policies is to divide. That's why he's doing it. And by the way, I got an inside bet. Be careful, J.D. Vance. If the toxicity gets too thick around Trump's flagrant race baiting, they may blame you for it and throw you under the bus and swap you out to insulate Trump. Remember, I said this. But even worse strategically than bashing Harris is how Trump is also doing his own people dirty in places he needs with leaders he needs, like in Georgia with Governor Kemp. Listen to this.
He's a bad guy, he's a disloyal guy, and he's a very average governor. Little Brian Kemp. Bad guy. If it wasn't for me, he would not be your governor. I think everybody knows that. He's a very disloyal person, isn't he? Very disloyal. Your governor, Kemp, and Raffensperger are doing everything possible to make 2024 difficult for Republicans to win. What are they doing? I don't know. They got something in mind, you know. They got a little something in mind. Kemp is very bad for the Republican Party.
Just hold the prompter for a second. Listen to what he just said. They're doing everything they can to make it hard for Republicans to win. What are they doing? I don't know. You realize he just said something and then told you that he didn't know the thing that he just told you. Is this really going to just keep being okay with independent voters? And by the way, in Georgia, Kemp is at 60% approval, almost 50% with independents. Trump needs him to win. And remember what his problem is with Kemp. Kemp refused to rig the election for him. Now, how do Georgians feel about that decision? Why do you think the applause were so quiet at that rally? 70% of Georgia voters trust their officials to run a fair election. Trump is giving them all the middle finger. Why? Fealty. Trump's play is that the whole party must kiss his muffin top without exception. People are getting it. They don't like it. He has to change or he will lose. He is also showing that he would rather see America fail if he does not get credit for any success. Exhibit A, the immigration bill, was not a perfect bill, was not going to pass in the House the way it was, but it was a lot closer than anything else they had, and they had Republicans involved from the House and the Senate in the Senate negotiation. Never have we heard Republicans say out loud that they would leave a problem festering to make it easier for someone to run on that problem. Trump did that. Where are his policy ideas for the border? Sure, Biden and Harris suck on the issue, and Harris has the border czar misnomer to deal with. But what is he offering? A massive roundup? No one thinks that's doable in a way that's not a disaster. Where are the policies? He did it with the prisoner swap as well. He would rather compliment Putin than Biden and Harris. Listen to this.
I'd like to congratulate Vladimir Putin for having made yet another great deal. Did you see the deal we made? We got our people back, but boy, we make some horrible, horrible deals, and it's nice to say we got them back, but does that set a bad precedent?
No, it's not nice to say we got them back. Say we got him back. That's nice. See, you got to hear it. Hear what he says to you. It's nice to say we got. No, it's nice that we got them back. Do you want to lead America or do you want to lead it from the hate parade position? We make these terrible deals. So did he. They're always terrible deals. Nothing about how he would change policy to make these kidnappings go away or get Putin under control. He did the same thing with the stock market today. He's basically celebrating the sell-off and saying Harris is owning it. The guy before me had a guest on that said Trump had more market-friendly policies. Like what? The tax cut that ballooned our debt and just made Wall Street happy? The market got crushed under Trump when COVID hit. And a big reason for that was he sapped the confidence out of it with how he mishandled it. 56% of us in this country believe we're in a recession. We're not. But why do they think that? Because of how uneven the economic benefit is in this country. Wall Street versus Main Street is way out of whack. So how will Trump bring down inflation? Tax cuts? Does the opposite. Fed rate cuts? He doesn't control that, but even if he did, does the opposite. Attack corporate pricing? He's in bed with those guys as much as the Democrats are now. He was just at a $500K a head fundraiser in the Hamptons. So, Harris has an opening. Seize policy. I'm a prosecutor, he's a predator. Clever, but a battle to the bottom is not to Harris's advantage. Now, I don't have a list of gotcha clips on Harris yet because she's largely ducking interviews with anyone but MSNBC minions. But she's going to have to start talking substance, and she's going to be held to account. The trick is, can she do what Trump cannot or will not? Okay? Own what hasn't worked. Own where you were wrong and fell short, and tell us what will make it better. The border, inflation, cost of college, lack of savings, the fortunes of the few eclipsing the many. As we saw today, the problems are real. And people are real aware that too much seems to be going too badly. But I don't think the best blamer wins. Not this time. The one with the best answers will. So let's take the top story. The long-awaited market sell-off. Why? Because guys who play the street are not shocked by what's happening right now. I wouldn't even say they're panicked. But a lot of other people are. Why? Because you're not in control, especially if you're trying to compete with these guys who are using all AI and block trades and all these other things. So what does this mean these last few days? Is it a sign of worse to come? Economically and politically, okay? The Dow's down 1,000 points. NASDAQ, S&P, they're all going down, 2.5%, 3%. We're still way up net, but it doesn't feel good. Is it a correction or is it an invitation to a recession? What does it mean for our politics? Who better to ask than the man who coined the phrase, "It's the economy, stupid," Democratic strategist James Carville, and former White House communications director under Trump and the founder of Skybridge Capital, a man who understands economics, Anthony Scaramucci. Good to see you both. Thank you for joining us. James, this is happening on Biden's watch. He has not done a great job, now Harris's job, to sell any virtues of their economic policy. How big a problem are the last few days?
And I saw a headline today says the largest sell-off since 2022, when the Democrats, of course, by everybody's estimation, were going to get wiped out. The Democrats hadn't lost an election in 2 years. I hate to tell the doomsdayers that. And by the way, Vice President Harris may be the most qualified non-incumbent to run for president in a long, long time. You could argue George H.W. Bush, maybe. I mean, she was a district attorney of a major city. She was attorney general of the largest state. She was the United States senator. She was vice president. I think there's a little bit more here than a DEI pick. I really do. And I think that we ought to, we can just say, this is, whether you like her or not, maybe you don't like her policies, and answering questions. She's already accepted a debate that Trump has backed out of. You can debate who answers the question at the debate. But I would argue that there's a colorable case to make she's the most qualified non-incumbent to run for president in a long time. I really would.
Okay. James, not to you specifically, but just for people. I get too much of this. I'm happy to take flack. Biden said she was a DEI hire, not me. Biden said he was picking a black woman. He should have picked Kamala Harris, said why, and included in her virtues that she's female and she's of mixed, biracial background. It's not me. It's
I will gladly debate you. I will gladly debate you that she's one of the most qualified people, non-incumbents, to run for president. And
I'm not saying she
obsession with her. Is she Indian? Is she black? Is she woman? She's qualified. She's eminently qualified for the job. That's my point.
I accept your point. I'm saying I'm not the one saying she's a DEI hire. Right. The president of the United States said.
Okay.
Anthony. Well, he did. What do you want me to tell you, Jim?
Did he ever say she was a DEI hire? Did he say she's a DEI hire?
A black woman. He said, I'm going to hire a black woman.
That's fine. Well, maybe he wanted a black woman. He said he'd appoint a black woman to the Supreme Court. He did. She's eminently qualified.
I know, and I don't think that's helpful.
I'm just saying.
I don't think it's helpful.
I'm just saying. Okay. Look, I'm not. I will be glad to debate how qualified she is.
I know, and that's okay. You can, and you'll be successful. Mooch, my point is simple. You know, you find me a black woman who wants that to be the first two reasons that she's getting a job, right? I mean, everything that James just said she did was put at the back of the list because of what Biden said. That's my only point. Now, how do the economics play, Anthony?
Well, just 32 seconds. I think James is just making a point that she is incredibly qualified and that this DEI thing is something that the Republicans are going to try to tag her with. And and I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, that he hired a black woman and so forth. But let me tell you something. You know, it is super hard. You know, I was at Harvard Law School with Barack Obama, where cabs passed him by on Massachusetts Avenue. Well, let's talk about the economy for a second, because I think it's super important. And a shout out to James Carville and Bill Clinton. I got my career started in the Carville-Clinton economy and helped me buy my first house.
Which was a great economy. Great economy.
So the good news is it is about the economy, and Joe Biden has a great record to run on. He's reshored businesses. You've had a reshoring of manufacturing. We're building microprocessor foundries in the U.S. now. Bridges, roads, and tunnels are reducing costs to American businesses through the infrastructure bill. And, you know, if we're being brutally honest, the president, because of his age and general frailty, has not been a great salesman for a wonderful economic agenda. And so now we have this very bright 59-year-old woman who's incredibly competent. She'll be able to get to the podium and explain the Biden economy and what it has meant to the American people, particularly, Chris, lower and middle income people who have had great wage gains in this economy.
Doesn't feel it, though. That's why so many people think it's a recession, and they're going to have to see what happens with the market.
That's the inflation. But remember, the inflation was born from the induction of the Fed and the fiscal policy. Right. All of that happened under Donald Trump. And he shouldn't be blamed for that, by the way. It's just a situational thing that's being fingered on Biden right now. It would have been Donald Trump's inflation. There was no way to get out of that with the fiscal and monetary measures that we took during COVID.
There's no question. We've never seen any period in America, or even during the New Deal, where they pumped this much money specifically into the stock market as opposed to into the economy. All right, so let's talk about the debate for a second. James is right. I think James is so right about Harris in terms of qualifications once you get onto the debate stage, that she's going to have a team that is going to have to coax her, Anthony, to win on points and not just knock him the F out, because I think that she will overwhelm Trump. Is that why you think he's getting dodgy about the debate? I thought it was all set for September 4th. Dusty's saying, no, he wants it to be Fox. She wants it to be ABC on the 10th. Do you think he's going to do it, or is he going to duck it?
Is that for James or me?
Anthony?
Yeah, so no, he's 100% debating. If I'm going into the poly market, predictive market, my money's on him debating. He cannot imagine the self-emasculation of him calling her a DEI hire and all of these different things, and then he can't bring himself to a debate stage to take her on a debate. He will get destroyed by the Democrats with that, and independents will not like that. And so somebody on his staff is going to tell him, hey, I know you're trying to get attention right now. It's the middle of August, blah, 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 and say whatever you want, but you got to show up at that debate.
I think they're going to have to hold her back, James. I mean, I've watched her debate. I've seen her on the stage, and I've seen him. I think she'll slice him up like cheese. I think her people are going to have to say, look, we got to play it easy here because people won't like how you're going to beat him up. I don't think. Look, I've said before, she should take the Fox debate on September 18th. That's the date that Trump is being sentenced in Manhattan. So he's kind of old and frail. Just make it convenient for him.
And I've been to the Fox Studios. It's right there on 6th Avenue or Avenue of the Americas, whatever y'all New Yorkers call it. You keep changing the name of it. But she can show up right there on Fox. And maybe Trump will have an ankle bracelet on, for all I know. But I think Anthony is right. Boy, if he doesn't debate her or he backs out, the Democrats are just going to be brutal and relentless about him being scared to debate a girl. And believe you me, he knows that's coming.
His people aren't going to like it either. And I'll tell you what, Anthony, I got to give this round to James. You guys aren't in competition. But he's right. When you are confident you're going to win, it's like when Anthony wants to take me on about something. He comes to where I live. He goes to where I want to eat. He sits down. He's happy to pay for the meal because he knows he's going to kick my butt. She should do the same thing. I'll debate you anywhere you want, with anyone you want, at any time you want. If she does all that and shows up on Fox and kicks his hiney, that is a moment. All right, Anthony Scaramucci, I got to jump. James Carville, I appreciate the conversation.
The most connected man in America, Chris. He's the most connected guy in America. I'm telling you that right now.
I'll tell you what, when I'm out with him, it's like being out with a movie star, James. He gives everybody $100 who says hello to him, but it's still nice.
Oh, my God. All right. I'm gonna. You know what? I'm not going to sell through the close. Good to see you, Mr. Carville. Thank you, Mr. Cuomo.
Take care, gentlemen. 4 minutes and 5 seconds.
Wipe the wet kiss off. Thank you.
Anyway, we talked policy. This is the economy. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to do with it? Here's why they don't want to debate. Okay, let's talk about why Trump may not want to debate. Because it's much easier to talk about someone than to them when they're standing on the podium. So, for instance, all of that ugly stuff that Trump said at the NABJ, he said he crushed it. I said, yeah, he crushed it if he meant crushing his chances of really moving the needle with black voters. Now he's targeting Republicans that he needs to win. Is this scorched earth path that he's on going to lead him to victory or just get him burned? I've got 3 strategists, 3 very different opinions. Next.
She has destroyed our country. We're going to bring it back, but she has destroyed our country. She's incompetent. She is a lunatic. She's acknowledged to be the worst vice president in the history of our country. She happens to be really a low IQ individual. You have a radical left freak, and we're going to defeat crazy Kamala. You know, there's about 19 different ways of saying it. She only likes 3.
Sounds like an idiot. I mean, come on, be honest. Be honest. That's the best that he can do? And as I was talking to James, look, Biden didn't do Harris any favors. Of course, he made her the VP nominee on the ticket. That was a big deal. But she does have a very established record. For this guy to call her stupid, I mean, it's just not a winning way. But this is who he is. He believes, largely because of crowd approval and past success and his party hiding under whatever they have to so they can't get in his way, that this is the way to win. We saw it in full swing last week at the NABJ. He then went to the rally in Atlanta, and it wasn't just Harris he went after. He went after the governor of the state that he needs to win, who has over 60% approval, 50% with independents. Is this a way to win, or are we watching him beat himself? Okay. The Veep stakes, I'm going to leave it alone until tomorrow, okay? And because, you know, who says? Nobody knows who it's going to be. So why talk about it? Let's talk about what Trump is doing, what the counter is, and how it's working. Conservative strategist Rena Shaw, former White House spokesperson for President George W. Bush, Pete Seat, and Democratic strategist Amisha Cross. Good to see each and all. First of all, show of hands. Am I missing something about how this is gold that Trump is putting out there and that this is the exact way to win? Does anybody think this is his best foot forward? No? All right, good. So I start with you, Pete. The idea of that, is this Trump can't do differently, or Trump really thinks he doesn't need to do differently? Specifically, we know what Harris is about, okay? Going after Kemp, what's the play there?
Well, Donald Trump thinks he always has the election in the bag, and that allows him the latitude, he believes, to be authentically him. And as you mentioned, if you've been to a Trump rally, that is precisely what the attendees want when they go. They want the shock value. They want the comedy routines. They want the tried and true greatest hits that he throws out there. Go back to 2016. People went to rallies because they wanted to chant, "Lock her up," which is what they saw on television. They wanted to be a part of this. And to tie it into what you've been talking about all night, Donald Trump is not a vehicle for ideology or for a policy agenda. Donald Trump is an attitude. He is a feeling. He is a vibe. And everyone in those rooms, in those rallies, feel right now that he is under assault, under attack by the judiciary, by an attempted assassination, and now by a change at the top of the ticket. And so they love what they're hearing from him.
Pete, let's talk about who they is for a second. You're voting for Trump. You don't want to be like Trump, though, do you?
No, but and this is my point. It's about the base. He plays to the base. We're used to normal politicians, Chris, who play to a base during a primary to get to a nomination and then, quote unquote, tack to the center in a general election. That's not Donald Trump's way.
I am used to politicians who don't embarrass people who say they're going to vote for him. That's what I'm used to. Now, Rena, and when we're talking about like what he's doing here with this and how it beats him, you and I both know people said to him, you got to back off what you said about Harris. And that's why he's just calling her an idiot and a freak now instead of talking about her race and her ethnicity. How dangerous is the line that he's walking?
Well, in Trump's own way, last week, he was trying to cast her as inauthentic, thinking he'd get some sympathy out of that audience. Obviously, that was more than a misstep. It was a blunder of epic proportions. And obviously, people who are on his team want to see him do better. They want to see him go beyond the character attacks, beyond identity. They want to see him talk policy. Let's get her on the record. He is incapable of doing that. But again, that's just who Trump is. What doesn't really line up, though, Chris, with the Trump we've known over the past many years is the guy who seems to be tripping over his own 2 feet right now. And that's, of course, to the advantage of the Harris campaign, because she's going to continue to fly high on all this momentum, something he had prior to picking J.D. Vance, a guy who capped his momentum and zapped his energy. And now we're looking at a moment where I don't see how he recoups, because this whole month, it's going to be VP pick energy. It's going to be convention energy. They're going to do their own unity dance, the Democrats. And what are people who don't like Trumpism going to do? They're going to say, well, I don't know. And that's the problem there. So that's why this is still an uphill battle for the Harris campaign. This is going to be a hard fight. They shouldn't let off the gas at any point, because the problem is those who bought into the playbook, Chris, that you and I both know for years that Republicans played, it was demonize the Democrats. And it seeps so deep in that it's even gone to some of the moderates. And that's who Harris needs to peel off.
Misha, you were at the NABJ, which was an interesting moment for you to witness, I'm sure. This is an opportunity, but it is so tempting, especially for Harris. I'm sure she just can't wait to get on the debate stage. She is such a faster, more cutting thinker than Donald Trump has ever been on his best day. But, are you worried that Harris cannot play the insult game with Trump and win in the places with the faces that she needs to? And if not, then how?
No, I'm not worried at all. I think that what Kamala Harris has is many strengths, and one of them is being able to read the room and understand an audience. She is also not afraid to throw a punch. She's been doing it her entire life. I think that at this point, there's a recognition of who Trump is and how Trump debates. He does not debate policy. He's a bully. He's proven himself to be a bully in every debate he's ever taken part in. And I think that to meet a bully, you have to throw some of that back at him. She's from Oakland. She gets it. I think the other part of this is a recognition that he cannot stay away from attacking women, particularly women of color. That is something that he has not tried to avoid throughout his entire career, and it's something he won't avoid on a debate stage. That is why his camp is extremely worried. She is prized and ready for this fight. And she will get up there and do what she needs to do, not only bringing it back to policy, but also meeting that man's energy. And I think that it takes that to actually corral Donald Trump. That's why he doesn't want to have this conversation. Her fundraising goals have been astronomical. The organizing she's been able to do in less than 2 weeks across the country, particularly focusing on battleground states, has been beyond anything historically we've ever seen in a campaign cycle, especially at this speed. She has nothing to worry about on the debate stage. What I saw when I was at the National Association of Black Journalists Conference in my hometown of Chicago last week was Donald Trump walking a room using his MAGA greatest hits in front of a 98% Black audience who is not MAGA. He was not speaking to us. He was speaking to his very siloed MAGA base. That's the same thing he's been doing this entire campaign cycle. You cannot win or formulate a very strong electoral campaign if you are only reaching a small swath of people. He is not and has never been interested in expanding that base. He is running on racism. He is running on misogyny. He is running on sexism. And he won't move away from it, despite better calls from stronger Republicans urging him to do so.
Well, we'll see. I got to jump, but I want to tell all of you, because you're all influential. So I think Trump should ask for the debate to be with Fox. And I think Harris should say it's fine with me. I think Carville's is exactly right. I think Harris should say, I'll go wherever you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want. Even have Megyn Kelly up there, Trump's new best friend, and let Harris take her on, too. I think that debate has to happen for the American people. Each and all, thank you very much. Pete, Rena, Amisha, thank you very much. Couldn't ask for better. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Up next, I'm always going to give you a diversity of opinion, and you then weigh it. I just make sure that they're smart and competent, and that, they overperform on each of those metrics. Over the weekend, the U.S. stepped it up. More ships, more weapons, more fighter jets to the Middle East. Israel is bracing for possible attacks from Iran. Isn't this escalation by any other word? And what should we be worried about right now? Because it seems like we're all too okay with this. A man who knows the region and the landscape better than anyone, a mentor of mine, next. Middle East. I think it's getting worse. I think it's expanding. And I think we're going to get more involved. And the idea that it hasn't really affected us yet, except for the stuff that we're sending there, it's not true. I mean, in January, February, you had those Iran-backed drone strike, right? Killed the 3 U.S. troops in Jordan. We retaliated, but so what? We're dying in a war that's supposedly not ours, right? You got bases getting hit all the time. Just today, 7 of our personnel were injured. No one's claimed responsibility yet. I wonder who it was. So we're giving more to Israel because they are preparing for more attacks from multiple fronts. Doesn't this seem like it's going in the wrong direction at an increasing or accelerating rate? So let's bring in my guest, who is someone who understands the region and the history. He worked for multiple different presidential administrations, left, right, and reasonable. State Department analyst, negotiator, Aaron David Miller. Good to see you, ADM. Are my concerns misplaced? Is this just the way it goes? Or do we have mission creep?
Well, it is the Middle East, Chris, and I think the administration, rightly understood when it came into office that our priorities lay elsewhere. They try to disengage and to manage. But, I don't know if you're an Eagles fan. I am. The iconic song, Hotel California, you can check out anytime you want.
The band. Yes. You can never leave. Sure.
You can never leave. That's the Middle East.
Stabbed it with their steely knives, but they just can't kill the beast.
You're good, Chris. I miss you. It's been way too long since we had a chat. It's the Middle East. It's a broken, angry, dysfunctional region. We have interests. We have adversaries. Sometimes I get the feeling, Chris, we're like some modern-day Gulliver wandering around in a region we really don't understand, tied up by powers, some of whom share interests, some of whom don't. But the situation this time around, we're going to go through a bad patch in the next several days. It's going to get worse before it gets worse. The Iranians have promised a response. Their problem is to figure out a way to cause the Israelis pain through a direct strike and using their proxies. As we saw again, Kataib Hezbollah didn't claim responsibility for the attacks on the al-Assad air base, which wounded several U.S. soldiers. But they're probably behind it. And the Iranians have to find a way to cause the Israelis pain without tripping into a major escalation, because the Israelis are prepared, I think, not just for defense, as we are prepared for defense. Israelis are prepared to go on offense. So we'll have to see where the shoes drop. Maybe tonight in the wee hours of the morning, maybe tomorrow night. The Iranians keep us guessing. But again, this week's going to be a tough one, I think.
What can the United States do that it isn't doing?
You know, since October 7th, the level of violence has reached not only just an intimacy of the killing on October 7th, serial raping, sexual predation, the mutilation, the taking of hostages, but the Israeli response, which has created a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza and an exponential rise of Palestinian deaths, whole families wiped out, a traumatized generation, both in Israel, Chris, and also among Palestinians. I think right now, and you know, I've abandoned most of my illusions, we got to try to manage. We got to try to manage and find a better pathway, maybe. You need a change in leadership, though, in Israel. You need a much bolder leader on the Palestinian side. And you're going to need a second term. And again, worked for Republicans and Democrats, voted for Republicans and Democrats, but I got to say, the prospects of actually something good happening would, I think, be buoyed if Kamala Harris became the next president. If it's Mr. Trump, I think we're going back to vanity and narcissistic politics, and I think the situation in the Middle East is not going to get any better anytime soon. I know that sounds like a partisan comment, but it's like Groucho Marx, right? I mean, who are you going to believe, me or lying eyes?
Yeah.
We need a president who believes in the national interest.
We need. That's all I hear from you, and you're right. We need better in Palestine. We need better in Israel. We need better here. We need better everywhere. We're not going to get better in Iran. That's the only place where the status quo is absolutely going to stay the same. I don't see it getting better, and I see it getting broader, and I think we're going to start hearing the word holy war a lot more, and we're not going to just be talking Jews and Muslims. We're going to be talking Christians. Let's continue the conversation. Adam David Miller, thank you so much, as always. Thank you for making it understandable. Good to hear you.
Love you, Chris, and thanks for having me.
All right, 3 minutes, 45 seconds. Up next, what do you think? I know you got a lot of concerns. What do you like? What do you not like? How much of it is my fault? 844-968-7720. Forget the last part. What do you got? But I don't want any callers who say that I'm saying that Harris is a DEI hire. I don't believe that. I just believe that saying you're going to pick a woman made it unfair for her. They should have picked her and then said all the reasons why and then included that she's a woman as a virtue instead of starting with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was his number one criteria. He made that very clear, and then he went, from there. But I do have some calls about that, so you're going to have to defend yourself. Bill, you're up.
Okay. What do you got?
Chris, I am a black registered Republican, and I constantly hear O'Reilly and Trump talk about a DEI. Now, I never hear either one of them speak except for white privileges. They may not be where they are today. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I don't vote either way, but I'd like for you to address that.
Amen. Amen, I say. I mean, Trump, how much more of an example of privilege do you need than him? I mean, literally, I've never heard a story of that guy where he was self-made in any way except his problems. So I'm with you. I get it. I accept it in myself. And I believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion are absolute American values. Now, the policies and how you put them into operative effect, that's something to debate. You have to make sure that merit remains the highest standard and the highest credential. But the idea that those things are inherently problematic, no, they are inherently instrumental in our success. I think nothing else but that, and I don't know how you could. Next.
Okay, we're still on this topic with Ron.
Your boy O'Reilly says race isn't a thing in politics, which is like a real bowl of crazy sauce. Next.
Ron from Lynbrook.
Yeah, listen,
Ron, what do you got?
Harris is playing the race card. She's black and she panders to the black vote when she needs the black vote, and she could be black. And then she goes into the facts on her own Indian heritage. So she's playing both sides of the issue.
Yeah, okay. Let me ask you something. What's your ethnic background? What's your ethnic background? Let's say you're Irish and Italian. Turn off his mic. He can't hear me. Let's say you're Irish and you're German, okay? So you're talking to Irish people. You're like, oh, my mother was Irish, and I understand. You're talking to people, oh, my father's family's German. Yeah. Are you a double speaker? No, you're both things, okay? Don't make it complicated for yourself because you want Trump to seem to be making sense, all right? You can be black and talk about being black, or as Trump would say, black, or you can be Indian and talking about being Indian, because you're both. Hello? It's a thing. It's a feature of humanity. It's not an oddity. It's not another letter in the list of diversity of identity that so many people find perverse. Next.
Okay, real quick. Ian from Atlanta, Georgia, quick.
Hi,
Ian.
Hi, Chris. Great analysis on how to run. Admit the issues, offer a solution. There is a candidate who lives this. Kennedy. In your Howard Beale presentation, which I loved, Kennedy is the wedge to make the change. Would you consider that?
Certainly consider it. I mean, that's why we have him on. It's not about, look, I think Bobby keeps shooting himself in the foot. The bear at the hand and the bear in the street and the worm in the brain and, all these other crazy things. He keeps making it too easy for people to write him off. But I don't believe the party should get to decide who you get to hear from. They are a tradition. They are not an institution in our country. And that's why we give him a platform. That's why we gave the guy who was running against Biden in the Democratic primaries a platform when other people weren't giving him the same one. Because you should get to decide. And the less party influence we have, the better. People are desperate for other choices. I think Bobby's making it tough for people. And I'd be really surprised if he gets over that threshold of 10, 15%. But I'm not against the concept, that's for sure. We need more choice. All right, we'll be back. Final thought or a toss right after this. It is odd to me for people to question Kamala Harris's racial makeup. We know better than this. And I don't understand why we can't just lean into the truth. America would never be where she is if it weren't for our diversity. That's why we're ahead of everybody else, because we have the best